Another issue that I think, again, coming out of the news, obviously, you know, the tragic school shooting in Connecticut in December, you know, raised everyone's consciousness about safety in schools. Immediately, much of the talk was about guns. I'm not actually convinced we're going to get to the gun debate in Florida. We may. Democrats may file some bills that look at additional restrictions on guns. But I think before you get to that point, which is obviously a hugely divisive issue, and this is probably one of the most pro-gun legislatures in the United States. The NRA is forceful in Florida, and I'm not sure we're going to get to that gun debate. But there's broad consensus that school safety, regardless of what you do on guns, is something that the law should look at.
All right. Most of the national debate now has been bifurcated between those who are talking about gun violence, okay, and those who are talking about other ways to secure the schools. So if we're not going to talk about gun violence in Florida, we might be talking about school safety. What are the set of issues that are going to be discussed revolving around school safety?
Well, the most obvious and immediate is armed officers in schools.
In every school.
In every school. Right now, most high schools and middle schools, public middle schools and high schools in Florida, have a school resource officer, a cop, with a gun in the school at least part of the day, most days, and many of them every day. Most elementary schools, by what I'm hearing, I understand, do not. That may change. Already, Hillsborough County, on their own, they've got to now have an armed officer in every school, at least this week. As students return from the Christmas break. Alachua County, same thing. I'm not sure if those are permanent moves or not. Representative Mike Fasano, he was a senator and had to leave the Senate because of term limits and ran for election to the House and won. Representative Mike Fasano is calling for an armed officer in every school. You know, there's been, initially there was talk about giving teachers guns. You know, I don't think that's very workable because the guns are near little children who might get them. But school resource officers, additional armed officers, I think is definitely going to be a topic of discussion in the legislature. So far, no bills have been filed, but I think that's something we're going to talk about.
All right, let's talk about another subject that keeps popping up in various places with presiding officers and others, and that comes under the general heading of ethics.
Right, and what exactly that means?
I
don't know.
What are they talking about?
Well, I cut you off and say, I'm not sure. I can see where you're going with that question. What is that? And I don't know. It's a big heading, and I think they're going to look at a lot of things. But the reason is because both Senator Don Gates, and who's the incoming Senate president, he is the Senate president now, and House Speaker Will Weatherford are they're interested in the ethical standing of the legislature. You know, I mean, it hasn't been the, you know, terribly scandal-ridden legislature over the last several years, but there have been a few pretty big ones. We lost a House Speaker, Ray Sansom, in an ethical issue. You know, there have been things from time to time. Grand juries have said there's all kinds of ethics issues. Both of these men want to do something about that. Now, what it is they want to do, I'm not sure exactly, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. Senator Gates, the guy who in the Senate will deal with this issue, Senator Jack Latvala, is the chairman of the Ethics and Elections Committee. He's suggested that one thing may be that these sort of cushy university and college jobs that some legislators seem to get, where it doesn't seem like they really have to do a lot. Except,
other than bring home the bacon.
Except be in the legislature where they write the budget for the university system. Yeah, maybe that's not a good idea. I think we might see legislation dealing with that. You know, as far as House Speaker Will Weatherford wants to deal with campaign finance laws, we may increase the amount of money that individuals could give to candidates. That's something he wants to look at in exchange for doing away with some of these committees that right now fund a lot of campaigns where you don't really know exactly what they're spending money on because the money gets funneled from one committee to another committee to another committee, and it's really sort of murky. You know, it's a big issue. There's a lot of things out there, but I think we're going to be talking a lot about it this year. Just what they're going to do, I'm not sure.
Okay, finally, in every session, there are some very interesting miscellaneous issues that kind of come out of nowhere, you know. You don't know why they're there, but they're always fun.
Right.
And some of them catch on, make headlines. Are you looking at any of those right now?
I am, and actually, these aren't exactly, they didn't exactly come out of nowhere. All of these are pretty, there's a few bills that have been filed already where you can see some things coming that are interesting. They're not going to be the huge issues of the session, but because they're already out there, we know they're going to be talked about. We're going to have we've already got a bill filed that would ban talking on a cell phone for kids, 16, 17, 18-year-old drivers. We've got a ban on texting for all drivers. Something I didn't realize, Florida is one of the very few states in the country that doesn't ban texting while driving. It's almost every other state in the country you can't text and drive at the same time. Florida is one of the few holdouts on that. There's a bill out there that would ban texting while driving. I'm not sure that's got a, there's a libertarian streak in the legislature that says government really shouldn't be telling you too much what to do in your car. That may prevail, but texting while driving causes accidents, and I don't think the jury's out on that, and so that's going to be an interesting issue to watch. This one's been around a few years, but it's back again, and that's red light cameras, sort of along the same lines, traffic safety and Big Brother. Red light cameras, there was a law a couple of years ago that sort of codified red light cameras. Before that, some cities had them, some places. Nobody was really sure whether they were really legal, and some places had them, some places didn't. The state codified them, said you can have red light cameras, and they put in place a structure for where the money goes if people get tickets after going through a red light and get caught by a camera. There's been all kinds of complaints about red light cameras. Do they really make the intersection safer? Are they, just an intrusion on your privacy to run red lights, I guess? But the repeal bill was filed last year, it didn't pass. A repeal bill has been filed again this year already. And that'll be, I think that'll be a tough issue. I think there's a lot of people who want to repeal that. There are some people who say it's a major safety issue and they want to keep it. One last sort of Big Brother-ish issue, because I think it's really interesting, and this one is below the radar and is not something most people think about, but Senator Joe Negron has filed a bill to prevent police from using what some people would call drones for law enforcement. Some people would just call them remote control airplanes with cameras on them, which is in effect what they are. And there are police agencies that are using those, mostly for traffic purposes, but they could use them for just about anything. Police in Miami are using them. Senator Joe Negron wants to ban local police departments from being able to use unmanned aircraft with cameras on them. They're flying over your backyard looking for a marijuana grow house or whatever. There are all kinds of constitutional questions about where law enforcement can look into. And, if you're talking about some guy up there flying in a plane, that's one thing because, it costs prohibitive to put a bunch of planes up there with cameras. But when you're talking about a little tiny airplane, that's a remote control plane, lots of cameras, theoretically they could have eyes all over the place. And Senator Negron is nervous about where that could lead, and that's a bill that I'm interested in watching.
Me too. Thank you, David. For those of you interested in Florida politics and government during 2013, read the Advances section of our website.